After my wife died, I told our children we would divide everything fairly. I didn't tell them that I had rewritten the will the day before she passed. When the lawyer finally read it out loud, half the room went pale. The other half started applauding. Before she died, my wife asked me for one last favor. "Don't split the inheritance between the children," Laura whispered, her hand cold but still trying to squeeze mine. "Split it between the ones who really love you." I knew exactly what she meant. In our family, it had somehow turned out that 3 of our 4 children had stopped keeping in touch with us. Not slowly, not gently, more like a door closing, one muted click at a time. Calls that went from weekly to monthly, then from monthly to, "Sorry, Dad, we've been busy," then to nothing but group texts about birthdays and obligatory holiday greetings. But my nephew Kevin and the boy from next door, Daniel, were always there. We were like grandparents to them. We celebrated all the holidays together, Thanksgiving, Christmas, even silly things like National Pancake Day, while from my own children I got nothing but postcards with printed signatures and dry congratulations. Sometimes not even that. "At least you're not alone," Laura used to say, watching Kevin and Daniel set up the projector for our movie nights. "Love is where it shows up, Henry, not where the birth certificates say it must be." I didn't believe her until I saw how my children behaved at her funeral. They did come. All of them. But the way they looked at me, it wasn't sympathy. It wasn't grief. On their faces, it was written clearly. "So when are you going to join Mom?" When I walked past the little knot of my son and older daughter near the entrance of the funeral home, I heard David mutter, "The house alone is worth at least $1 million. If he sells it, he'd better not waste it on handouts to those boys." Those boys. He meant Kevin and Daniel. My oldest, Melissa, whispered back, "Let him grieve first. Then we talk numbers." Numbers. While their mother lay in a coffin 10 feet away. That was the moment I realized something had already died long before Laura's heart stopped. Something between me and 3 of my children. Not wanting to argue with anyone, I kept quiet. I watched them give their speeches. Pretty words, perfectly rehearsed, tears that came on cue and dried just as quickly. When the service ended, they hugged me, left in their expensive cars, and the house fell silent again. Except for Kevin, who stayed to stack chairs and wipe down tables. Except for Daniel, who drove my car home because my hands were shaking too badly to hold the wheel. That night, in our bedroom that still smelled faintly of Laura's lavender lotion, I pulled out the folder from my dresser. The new will, signed the day before she died. Her last signature still looked uncertain, like her hand had trembled halfway through her own name. "Don't split it between blood," she told me. "Split it between love." She had circled the clause herself, slowly, like it was the only thing that still mattered. I stared at the names listed as beneficiaries. Not David, not Melissa, not my middle child Eric. The entire estate, our house, the investments, the business sale money, everything, was to be divided in equal shares between Kevin and Daniel. At their mother's funeral, my children had come. But their eyes weren't on the casket. They were on the future balance of my accounts. So I made a decision. I would not argue. I would not explain. I would not beg for their understanding. I would simply show them who their mother had believed deserved our life's work. And I chose Thanksgiving Day to do it. I invited all my children, my nephew, and the neighbor boy. Without the promise of hearing about the inheritance, my children wouldn't have come at all, so I had to lure them in that way. I told them I wanted to go over some important documents and make sure everyone was clear about the future. There was a pause after I said that over the family group chat. Then 3 typing bubbles appeared at once. David, "We'll be there, Dad." Melissa, "Of course. It's about time we talked about that." Eric, "I'll rearrange some things. See you then." My youngest daughter, Hannah, sent only one line. "I'll be there, with or without papers." That message stayed on my screen long after the others disappeared. And so, after the toasts of gratitude that night, when plates were still half full and the smell of roasted turkey clung to the air, I stood up and cleared my throat. My hands shook, not from age, but from the weight of what I was about to do. I announced my will. All my assets, savings, and the house were to go in equal shares to my nephew and the neighbor boy. For a second, there was absolute silence. Then my son and older daughter stood up at the same time, their chairs scraping across the floor like claws. David didn't say a word. Neither did Melissa. They just left, coats in hand, door slamming so hard that a photo of Laura tilted on the wall. Eric followed a beat later, muttering something about needing to think, and this being a joke. But Hannah stayed. She looked from the paperwork to my face, eyes wet, bottom lip trembling. Her hands were empty. She had nothing to gain now. She walked around the table and put her palm on my shoulder. "Money is money, Dad," she said quietly. "I came for you." And she sat down. She didn't know it then, but in that single moment she answered the question that would define the rest of her life. $15 million in inheritance? Or a relationship with her father? Hannah chose me. The others chose the money. And that is where the real story begins. You don't build $15 million by accident. You build it one overtime shift, one risk, one argument, one night spent awake with a calculator and a headache. When I was 30, I had nothing but Laura, a rusted pickup, and a toolbox. By 50, I had a small construction company. By 65, I had sold that company to a national firm for more money than I had ever thought I'd see in one lifetime. Laura cried when the payment cleared. "Not because of the money," she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Because now you might finally rest." We bought nothing extravagant. No yacht, no mansion on a cliff. I kept the house we'd raised the kids in, a solid brick 2-story with creaky steps and a maple tree in front that had grown alongside our children. We remodeled the kitchen because she wanted one nice thing before she died, though she didn't know then what was coming. Marble counters, new cabinets, soft close drawers. "This will be where our grandchildren bake cookies," she said, running her hand along the countertop. She was wrong. Most of my grandchildren know that kitchen from photos, not memories. When Laura got sick, I thought our children would rally around us. At first they did. Calls, flowers, carefully timed visits when they had weekends free. But cancer doesn't respect schedules. It doesn't wait for convenient holidays or gaps between business trips. The more it progressed, the more some of my children pulled away. "I can't keep flying out every week, Dad," Melissa said once over the phone. "Flights are expensive, and you know how hectic things are at the firm." "Put her on FaceTime," David would say. "I don't do hospitals. It messes with my head." Eric tried. I'll give him that. At first. But his wife hated the smell of disinfectant and the sight of IV bags, and soon his visits dropped from weekly to monthly to, "We'll come when she's feeling better." Laura noticed. She always noticed everything. "Don't be hard on them," she said one afternoon, when the chemo had left her too weak to lift her head. "They have their own lives." Kevin came every Sunday. He brought coffee, though Laura couldn't drink it anymore, and he'd sit on the edge of her hospital bed and tell her about his classes, about the idiot in his economics group project, about the neighbor's new dog. Daniel, the boy from next door who'd grown up practically on our lawn, walked our trash cans to the curb every Thursday without being asked. He fixed a leaky sink while I sat in the hospital cafeteria, wondering how the hell I was going to live without my wife. On the night before she died, the hospital corridors were quiet. The machines blinked their indifferent lights. The air smelled like antiseptic and endings. Laura's voice was barely a whisper. "Henry," she said, "promise me something." I leaned closer, my old knees protesting against the cold tile. "Anything. Don't let them buy your love after I'm gone." I swallowed. "Who?" She gave me a look. The kind that used to stop our kids mid-tantrum. You know who, she said. The ones who only come when they need something. The ones who treat you like an ATM. The ones who forget who sat up with them when they had fevers, who paid for braces, for college, for houses. My throat closed. I don't want them rewarded for what they've become, she continued. I want the ones who are here when no one is watching. The ones who show up when it's inconvenient. The ones who love you when you have nothing to give them. She coughed, a dry, scraping sound that made me want to tear the IV lines out and carry her home in my arms. Don't split the inheritance between the children, she said. Split it between the ones who really love you. I opened my mouth to protest, but she cut me off with a look. Henry, do you love me? With everything I am, I said. Then do this for me. And she died the next afternoon. That morning, I called our lawyer. The law office smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. A painting of a mountain hung crooked on the wall behind Aaron's desk. A gift from a grateful client, he'd told us once. Laura's side of the leather couch sat empty. Her purse still hung on the hook by our front door at home. You're sure you want to do this now? Aaron asked gently, glasses perched on the edge of his nose. We can wait, Henry. No one needs to know anything for a while. She wanted it done, I said. She was clear. He nodded, steepling his fingers. All right, let's go over the structure again. We had the old will in front of us. It was straightforward. Each of our 4 children would receive an equal share of the estate. No one could call it unfair. But fairness, I was learning, is not the same as justice. The new document was thicker, more precise. House, investments, savings, and the proceeds from the sale of my company, $15 million in total, more or less, depending on the markets, were to be divided in equal shares between 2 names, Kevin Miller, our nephew, Daniel Ortiz, our neighbor's son. All of it? Aaron asked again. None to your children? Not even a symbolic amount? Sometimes that helps avoid legal challenges. What avoids legal challenges, I said, is not leaving millions to people who treat you like an inconvenience. He watched me for a long moment, searching for hesitation. He didn't find any. We'll add a letter of intent, Aaron said finally, pulling a separate sheet toward him. It's not legally binding, but it explains your reasoning in your own words. Judges like those if it ever goes to court. I wrote it myself. I wrote about Laura's last wish, about who had been there, about who hadn't. I wrote about how money reveals people. I wrote about how blood doesn't guarantee love. I signed it with a hand that had built houses and businesses and cradled newborns and held Laura's as she slipped away. The only person who can change this now is you, Aaron said, sliding the papers into a folder. As long as you're of sound mind and not under duress. I'm old, I said. Not stupid. He smiled faintly. I never thought you were. Just be prepared, Henry. When they find out, it won't be pretty. I shrugged, though my chest felt hollow. When they find out, I said, I'll know exactly who they've been all along. They showed me who they were at the funeral. After the closing prayer, people drifted toward me with damp eyes and practiced sympathy. I'm so sorry for your loss. She was a wonderful woman. If you need anything? Most of them meant well. Some were just saying what people say when they don't know what else to say. My children came in a cluster, like they always had at social events, an orbit around themselves. Melissa went first, a quick hug, perfume too strong, mascara somehow intact. You holding up okay, Dad? She asked mechanically. No, I said, but I'm standing. She nodded, already glancing over my shoulder at something, or someone, more interesting. I'll call you this week, she said. We should talk about, things. David didn't even pretend. I know it's not the right time, he murmured, leaning in as if we were sharing a secret. But we need to be smart about what happens now. With the house, with your accounts. Estate taxes will eat you alive if we don't plan. Your mother is 10 feet away, I said flatly. In a box. His jaw tightened. I'm being practical, Dad. Someone has to think ahead. He had always thought ahead. Ahead to his next bonus. Ahead to his next promotion. Ahead to the day he wouldn't have to worry about college savings for his own kids because there's always your money. Eric, my middle son, hugged me longer than the others. His eyes were red. I believed at least some of his tears were real. We'll come by next weekend, he said. Nora's been asking when we can help go through Mom's things. Nora's idea, I suspected. She liked nice clothes and better furniture. Laura had both. Hannah arrived last. She had driven 6 hours through the night, leaving her own kids with a neighbor so she could make it in time. Her hair was messy. Her dress was wrinkled. Her eyes were swollen. She didn't say anything at first. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on like she was afraid I might vanish if she let go. I should have come more, she whispered into my jacket. I kept waiting for later. There is no later, I said. Not anymore. She pulled back, wiping her nose on the back of her hand, just like when she was 8. I'm not going anywhere now, she said. I wanted to believe her, but grief makes liars out of all of us, sometimes even unintentionally. That night the house felt too large for one person. Laura's slippers still sat by the bed. Her mug was in the sink. Her list of things to fix was magneted to the fridge, though half the items had already been crossed off, by Kevin, by Daniel, by me. I went into my office, closed the door, and took the folder containing the will out of the locked drawer. I looked at the names again. I thought of my children's faces at the funeral, the way their eyes slid past the coffin and into the future. For a brief second, I considered calling Aaron and reversing it all. Then I heard Laura's voice in my head. Don't let them buy your love after I'm gone. I put the folder back, and I began to plan Thanksgiving. You learn a lot about a person by how they show up to your home. Kevin arrived 2 hours early on Thanksgiving morning, as he always did. His arms were full of grocery bags, his cheeks pink from the November wind. You didn't have to bring all this, I said, taking a bag that felt suspiciously like it contained too many potatoes. He shrugged and grinned. Laura would haunt me if I let you cook alone on Thanksgiving. He was right. She would have. Daniel showed up a little later with a folding table and an ancient Bluetooth speaker. Thought we could use more space, he said, setting the table up in the dining room. And some music. Laura liked that old jazz playlist, right? He didn't call her Mrs. Collins anymore, not since the last month of her life, when she'd told him she was tired of sounding like a school teacher. Just call me Laura, she had said. I've earned it. By noon, the house smelled like roasting turkey, cinnamon, and something else I hadn't felt in months. Warmth. Life. Kevin mashed potatoes in a big porcelain bowl, humming under his breath. Daniel set out plates and polished silverware until it gleamed. They joked, bickered about cranberry sauce versus jelly, argued over whether football should be on during dinner. Normal things. I almost forgot what I had planned for the evening. Almost. My children arrived the way they lived, like they were entering a meeting that might benefit them. David was first, in a dark blazer that probably cost more than my first truck. His wife, Jenna, trailed behind, scrolling on her phone. Smells good, he said, looking past me into the house as if he were inspecting it. You should get those gutters checked, Dad. They're sagging. He didn't notice that they'd been fixed last week. By Daniel. Melissa came next, late as always and full of apologies about traffic, work, a delayed Zoom call that had thrown off her whole day. Still, I made it, she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. You see, I prioritize family. Eric and Nora arrived already arguing about something. Their 2 kids rushed past me without saying hello, making straight for the living room TV. Hannah was last. She carried a pie that looked like it had been a battle more than a recipe. Pumpkin, she said, cheeks flushed. It cracked in the oven, but it tastes okay, I swear. It's perfect, I said. She hugged me, and for a moment I forgot about the folder in my office. We ate. We laughed, at least on the surface. David made a toast about new chapters. Melissa talked about a promotion she was sure she'd get next quarter. Eric complained about his commute. Nora mentioned casually that houses in their area were going for crazy money, and how it would be such a blessing to upgrade. Kevin and Daniel sat at the far end of the table, a little too quiet. They weren't used to being outnumbered. I watched my children the way a man watches a bridge he knows is about to collapse. When the plates had been cleared and the pie reduced to crumbs, I stood up. My knees creaked. My heart thumped. I'd rehearsed the next words in my head all week. "Before everyone leaves," I said, "there's something I want to share with you all." 6 pairs of eyes lifted toward me. 2 pairs, Kevin's and Daniel's, were alert but puzzled. The other 4 carried something else. Expectation. I went to my office, retrieved the folder, and brought it back to the dining room. "Dad," David said slowly, "are you sure this can't wait?" "It can," I said. "I don't want it to. I'd rather you hear it from me than from some lawyer after I'm gone." Hannah's face tightened at the word gone. "This is my will," I said simply, placing the folder on the table. Melissa exhaled, like a runner hearing the starting gun. "Dad, you don't have to—" "I do," I interrupted. "For your mother." Silence. I opened the folder and unfolded the document, the heavy paper whispering against itself. "I'll spare you the legal language," I said. "I'll just read the important part." My voice sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet room. "I, Henry Collins, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath all property, real and personal, including my residence at 413 Maple, all investment accounts, savings, and the proceeds held from the sale of Collins Construction Services, to be divided in equal parts between—" I let the words hang for a heartbeat. "My nephew, Kevin Miller, and my neighbor, Daniel Ortiz." For a second, no one moved. Then the explosion came. "You're kidding." David's voice was a low growl. His face reddened so fast it was almost impressive. "This is some kind of joke, right? Is this because we didn't come every weekend?" Melissa's lipstick trembled against her teeth. "Because we have lives, Dad? Jobs? Families?" Eric just stared at me as if trying to decide whether I'd lost my mind. Nora went pale, calculating something silently. Kevin's eyes widened. Daniel's fork clattered onto his plate. "I don't want your money, Uncle Henry," Kevin stammered. "I mean, I love you, you know that, but this—" "Sit," I said gently. "Both of you. We'll talk about it later." David pushed his chair back so hard it nearly toppled. "This is insane," he spat. "You're letting 2 kids take everything Mom and you built? Everything we were supposed to—" "Supposed to what?" I asked quietly. "To get? To receive? To inherit, like a paycheck you earned?" Jenna put a hand on his arm. "David, maybe we should—" "No." He yanked his arm away. I knew Kevin was taking advantage, always hanging around, fixing things, pretending to care. I should have seen it. Kevin flinched like he'd been slapped. "Don't talk about him like that." Hannah snapped before I could speak. "This is ridiculous," Melissa said. "I sacrificed so much. I went to law school. You sacrificed?" I asked. "What did you sacrifice for me? For your mother?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. David grabbed his coat off the back of his chair. "You want to give away $15 million to 2 random kids?" he said, voice shaking. "Fine. Enjoy your new family." "They're not random," I said. "They were here when your mother was dying." He ignored me. He walked out, Melissa right behind him. The door slammed. Their taillights flared red through the front window and disappeared. Eric stood up more slowly. "I need time," he muttered. I don't even know what this is." Nora hesitated only long enough to send Kevin and Daniel a look of pure venom. Then they were gone too. The house felt twice as empty as it had before they arrived. Kevin stared at his hands. Daniel stared at the table. "I think I'm going to be sick," Daniel said softly. Hannah remained where she was, fingers twisted around a napkin until the paper shredded. "You knew they'd react like this," she said, voice shaky. "Didn't you?" "Yes," I said. "And you did it anyway." "Yes." Kevin finally looked up. "Uncle Henry, this isn't fair," he said. "To them. I mean, I love you like a father, but they're your actual kids." "And where were they when your aunt couldn't keep food down? When she needed rides to chemo? When she was so weak she couldn't walk to the bathroom alone?" I asked. He winced. "Where were you?" I continued. "Here," he whispered. "And you?" I asked Daniel. He swallowed. "Here." I turned to Hannah. She was watching me with eyes that looked too much like her mother's. "You haven't asked why," I said. She laughed, a short, humorless sound. "I know why," she said. "I just hate that you had to see it, that you had to need us and find out who we really are." "Is that who you are?" I asked. She held my gaze. "I came tonight because you're my father," she said. "If you'd told me you were in debt, if everything had burned down, and there was nothing left to divide except leftover turkey and grief, I'd still be here. If this is about who earns your love, you already gave me more than I ever deserved years ago." She pushed her chair back and came around to me. Her hand settled on my shoulder, warm and trembling. "Money is money, Dad," she said softly. "I came for you." And she stayed. I didn't sleep that night. Grief for Laura had already carved out a hollow inside me. Now something else joined it. Anger, disappointment, a dark sort of clarity. Kevin and Daniel both called before bed, voices shaky. "Are you sure?" Kevin asked. "We don't want to break your family." I almost laughed. "They were already broken," I said. "You just didn't see the cracks." "But $15 million? Daniel whispered, like saying the number too loud might wake some monster. "I didn't even know you had that kind of money." "Neither did they," I said. "Not the full amount. They guessed. They speculated. They planned. But I never gave them the figure." "Why not?" he asked. "Because if some people know you have that much, they stop seeing you," I said. "They see a walking vault." He was quiet for a moment. "Is that what they see?" he asked. "You heard them," I said. He had. We all had. The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 21 missed calls, 16 messages. Most from my children, some from cousins, a few from unknown numbers that I suspected were lawyers. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table Laura had picked out, watched the sunlight crawl across the floor. Then I started listening. David's first message was measured, the way he spoke to clients. "Dad, it's David. Look, I think we all overreacted last night. We were shocked. Let's talk about this like adults. I'm sure we can find a compromise that honors Mom and keeps things balanced. Balanced. As in him getting what he believed he deserved." Melissa's first message was crying. "Dad, I love you," she sobbed. "I was just hurt. Please call me back. We need to fix this before people start talking. Before people start talking, not before we lose you." Eric's message was the hardest. "Dad, I don't care about the money," he said. "Nora does, but I feel like you're punishing us for not being perfect children. We tried. I tried. Maybe not enough. I don't know. Call me. Please." Behind his words, I could hear Nora saying something sharp, then another of David, another of Melissa. The tone shifted quickly from pleading to angry. "You can't actually do this," David said in one. "A court would never uphold something this unreasonable." "This is Kevin and Daniel manipulating you," Melissa said. "There are laws against elder abuse, you know, against undue influence." Undue influence. Big words she must have pulled from some legal database. No one asked how I was. No one said, "Dad, are you okay? Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Do you need anything after we screamed at you and walked out?" No one except Hannah. Her message was simple. "Hi, Dad. I made it home. The kids say hi. I know everyone's freaking out. I'm not calling to talk about any of that. I just wanted to know if you slept." I didn't call any of them back that day. Instead, I called Aaron. "They're going to contest it," I said, sitting in his office again. Aaron leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced over his stomach. "Yes," he said, "they are." "Can they win?" He tilted his head. "Winning is a relative term," he said. "They can waste your time. They can drain your energy. They can drag your name through mud and make things ugly. But they will have a hard time overturning this will, Henry. You're competent. You've documented your reasoning. You have witnesses to your state of mind. And frankly, their behavior corroborates your letter of intent." I thought about David threatening legal action while Laura was barely cold. About Melissa calculating out loud how much she could pay off in student loans once Dad goes. "I don't want a war," I said. "Then hope they accept it," Aaron replied. "But from what you've told me, I'd advise you to prepare for the worst." We spent an hour going over scenarios. Could they claim I was coerced? They could. They'd fail. Could they argue I'd forgotten about them? Not with a letter explaining exactly why I'd done what I'd done. Could they try to have me declared incompetent? They could try. They'd need doctors, evaluations, sympathy the judge might not grant them when he saw the file I'd already given Aaron, the one with Laura's last wishes, with records of Kevin's and Daniel's years of support, with my attempts to reach out to my own children during her illness. "What about Hannah?" I asked. "What about her?" Aaron asked in return. "She was here last night," I said. "She stayed." "And?" he asked. "And the will doesn't include her," I said. It hurt to say it out loud. "The will reflects your situation as of your wife's passing," he reminded me gently. "At that time, Hannah wasn't here either. If you want to change things, you can." "Not yet," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You're testing her," he said. I looked away. "Money changes people," I said. "I want to see if she meant what she said when she chose to stay." "That's a dangerous game, Henry," he murmured. "I've watched my children play dangerous games with my heart for years," I replied. "Maybe it's time they find out there's a cost." Before I left, Aaron slid another set of papers across the desk. "What's this?" I asked. "Something we talked about a while back," he said. "A living trust. If things get too ugly, we move most of your liquid assets into it. It won't change who the eventual beneficiaries are, but it gives us more control over what's visible and what isn't during any potential litigation." "How much would be invisible?" I asked. "Enough," he said. "Enough that if they sue you for the $15 million they believe exists, they might be disappointed by what's actually on the table." I looked at the documents. Laura's voice echoed in my ears. "Split it between the ones who really love you." "Let's do it," I said. For a while, things were strangely quiet. David didn't show up at my door. Melissa didn't barge in, waving printouts from Google about inheritance law. Instead, the attacks came in softer ways. Jenna called one afternoon, her voice syrupy. "Henry, we're just worried you're being taken advantage of," she said. "Kevin's so young. Daniel, too. They don't understand how complicated wealth can be. It's a lot of pressure for boys their age." "I was younger than Kevin when I doubled this company's revenue," I said. "Age isn't the issue." "It is when you're old," she said, then quickly added, "I mean, when you're vulnerable. Grief can make people impulsive." I hung up when she started hinting about family mediation. Melissa's husband, Thomas, sent me an email with a link to an article about financial predators. "No one wants their father to be scammed," he wrote. "We should get you a second opinion about your estate before it's too late." Eric came in person. He stood on my porch, hands jammed into his pockets, eye sockets hollowed by lack of sleep. "I don't want to fight you, Dad," he said. "But Nora, she's scared. She quit her job to stay home with the kids. We were counting on—" He trailed off, ashamed. "On me dying?" I asked. He winced. "On the inheritance," he said. "On the idea that we'd be okay when you were gone." "You could be okay now," I said. "You could downsize, spend less, live within your means. You make good money, Eric." "Nora grew up differently," he muttered. "She's used to a certain lifestyle." "And you grew up with secondhand clothes and generic cereal," I said. "It didn't kill you." He looked up, angry now. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You raised us to believe family looked out for each other, that parents leave something behind for their children. Now you're giving everything to someone else's kid and the neighbor boy?" "Family looks out for each other while they're alive," I said. "Not when there's a payout at the end." He clenched his jaw. "Maybe Kevin and Daniel are saints now," he snapped. "But wait until they smell that money. See how fast they change." "Maybe they will," I said. "If they do, I can change my will again. That's the difference between them and you. They're still showing me who they are. You already did." He left without hugging me. 3 days later, an envelope arrived in the mail from a law firm I didn't recognize. My hands didn't shake as I opened it. I'd been expecting this. "Notice of intent to contest last will and testament," Aaron read aloud, scanning the document. We sat in his office again, the fake mountain still crooked behind him. Plaintiffs: David Collins, Melissa Grant, Nay Collins, and Eric Collins. "Of course they teamed up," I muttered. "They never worked together this well when they were kids." Aaron's mouth twitched. "They're alleging undue influence by Kevin and Daniel," he said. "Definition: they claim those two manipulated you into cutting your children out of your estate." "Kevin and Daniel didn't even know the will existed until Thanksgiving night," I said. "I know that," he said. "You know that. Now we just have to convince a judge." "Can they force me to come to court?" I asked. "Yes," he said simply. I sighed. At my age, I thought I'd be spending my time spoiling grandchildren, not defending myself against my own children, I said. He looked at me over his glasses. "You could make this go away with one signature," he said. "Reinstate them. Give them a cut. Even a smaller one, enough to make them back off." I considered it for exactly 1 second. "No," I said. "If I sign something now because they threaten me, I prove their point, that I'm vulnerable and easily influenced, and I reward their behavior. They already think they can get anything they want if they push hard enough. That stops now." "All right," Aaron said. "Then we fight." The court date was set for 6 weeks later. In those 6 weeks, I learned exactly who each of my children really was. David switched tactics. He stopped calling directly and started sending me articles. Links to think pieces about the emotional cost of parental favoritism. PDFs about inheritance trauma. Screenshots of comments from online forums where people described their pain at being disinherited. In a way, he wasn't wrong. Disinheritance can be cruel, brutal. But he never once asked why his mother had wanted it this way. Melissa doubled down on the emotional manipulation. She left crying voicemails about being humiliated in front of her children when Kevin and Daniel's names had been read. "My kids ask me why Grandpa doesn't love us," she sobbed. "What am I supposed to tell them?" "That you don't measure love in dollars," I wanted to say. That their grandfather paid for their school supplies and vacations and sports fees for years without complaint, long before inheritance ever entered the picture. But I didn't call back. Eric faded. He texted occasionally. "How are you feeling today? Need anything from the store?" He never mentioned the lawsuit. I suspected he'd been dragged into it more by Nora's pressure than his own greed. But he'd signed the papers. Hannah visited every Sunday. She brought her kids. who tracked leaves into the house and laughed too loudly and spilled juice on the couch. She brought casseroles, crooked drawings, stories from their tiny town 2 hours away. Sometimes she cleaned. Sometimes she just sat with me on the porch in silence, watching the maple tree drop its last leaves. Only once did she mention the will. We were washing dishes, sleeves rolled up, warm water running over our hands. "You know they're going to court, right?" she asked quietly. "I got the letter," I said. She stared at the bubbles. "I didn't sign anything," she said. "I know," I said. "They wanted me to," she added. "They said I was betraying them if I didn't." "You're my daughter, not their soldier," I said. She smiled faintly. "I told them they were adults," she said. "If they felt wronged, they could handle it themselves. I wasn't going to stand in front of you in a courtroom." "Thank you," I said. She shrugged. "I also told them—" She stopped, biting her lip. "What?" I asked. "I told them that if they were so sure you were incompetent, they should have thought about that before they left you alone for months while Mom was dying," she said. I closed my eyes. "Did that help?" I asked. "Not even a little," she said, "but it felt good." We rinsed the last plate in silence. "Hannah," I said finally. "Yeah?" "If I never changed the will," I said, "if Kevin and Daniel got everything, what would you think of me?" She didn't answer immediately. Then she dried her hands on a towel and turned to face me. "I'd think you did what you believed was right," she said. "I'd still visit on Sundays. I'd still bring the kids. I'd still call you when the washing machine made a weird noise and pretend I didn't know how to fix it without you." She smiled, eyes shining. "And I'd still miss Mom with you," she added. Sometimes the simplest answers are the loudest. On the day of the hearing, the courthouse smelled like old wood and coffee. The judge was younger than I expected, maybe in his early 50s. He wore his robe like a man who'd long ago made peace with the fact that half the people in his courtroom would always be angry at him. David sat with Melissa and Eric on one side of the room, their attorney between them. Kevin and Daniel sat behind me on the other side, hands folded, ties slightly crooked. Hannah sat in the back row, jaw clenched. "Case number 23-117, the clerk read. "Collins et al. Versus Collins." The judge glanced at the file. "All right," he said. "Who's going first?" My children's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is a clear case of undue influence and impaired capacity," he began. "Our client's father, Mr. Henry Collins, recently lost his wife of 40 years. In the midst of his grief, he was manipulated by two much younger individuals." "Objection," Aaron cut in. "Counsel is stating argument as fact." "Watch your phrasing, counselor," the judge said mildly. The lawyer adjusted. "We intend to show that at the time of the will's execution, Mr. Collins was vulnerable," he continued, "and that the result, a complete disinheritance of his 3 biological children in favor of 2 non-relatives, is so unnatural as to raise serious questions. Unnatural. As if love followed a family tree by law." I tuned most of it out. The legal jargon flowed like a river I had no interest in swimming in. What brought me back was the sound of my own voice. They were playing the letter I'd written with the will, the one Aaron had advised. "This is not a decision made in haste," the recording of my voice said. "My wife Laura asked me, on her deathbed, to leave our estate to those who showed us love when we had nothing left to give. The ones who came when it was inconvenient. The ones who held hands in hospital rooms instead of calculating in living rooms." David shifted in his seat. Melissa stared at the floor. Eric swallowed hard. The judge looked at them over the rim of his glasses. "Mr. Collins," he said, turning to me, "do you understand that by this will you are leaving nothing to your children?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "Have you been coerced or pressured by these beneficiaries?" he asked, nodding toward Kevin and Daniel. No, Your Honor, I said. In fact, they tried to refuse it. Kevin nodded vigorously. The judge read through the paperwork. Your financial situation, he said. You understand the value of your estate? Yes, I said. How much is it worth, approximately? He asked. I told him. The courtroom went silent. My children knew I had money. They didn't know it was that much. 15 million. Melissa's mouth fell open. David's eyes narrowed, calculations already rewriting themselves in his head. The judge sat back. You built this? He asked. Yourself? With my wife, I said. Yes. And you're of the opinion that you have the right to decide what happens to it? He asked, one eyebrow raised. I am, I said. No further questions for Mr. Collins, he said, almost dryly. My children's lawyer tried to pick at details. Was I on medication at the time of signing? Yes. Painkillers for my back. Did those medications impair my judgment? No. My doctor had already provided a statement. Had Kevin and Daniel ever discussed finances with me? Yes, to help me understand some online banking, but never to push me one way or another. Did I feel closer to them than to my own flesh and blood? At that time, yes, because they were around. The judge took his time. Finally, he closed the file. I'm not here to fix hurt feelings, he said, voice firm. I'm here to determine whether this will was executed legally, with full capacity, and without undue influence. He looked at my children. Adult children are not entitled to an inheritance, he said, no matter how much they may feel they deserve one. Parents can leave their estate to whomever they choose, for reasons we may not like, but that are theirs to own. Melissa's lawyer tried one last angle. Your Honor, the distribution here is so extreme. It's not my job to decide whether it's generous, the judge cut in. Only whether it's valid. He paused. I find no basis to overturn this will, he said. Motion denied. The gavel came down. The sound echoed in the room. David shot to his feet. This isn't over, he hissed, loud enough for half the courtroom to hear. He glared at Kevin and Daniel. You think you've won, he snarled. You have no idea what 15 million does to people. We'll see how long your halo lasts when the zeros hit your account. Kevin's face went white. Daniel stared at the floor. Hannah moved down the aisle like a storm. That's enough, she snapped, stepping between them. You lost, David. Not because Kevin tricked Dad, not because Daniel somehow brainwashed him, because you never once looked at what you were doing, only at what you thought you were owed. Stay out of this, he snapped. I am in this, she shot back. I'm his daughter, too. For now, Melissa muttered under her breath, until he decides you aren't grateful enough either. I watched them fight with a detachment that scared me. Once I would have broken my back to keep peace between my children. Now I realized I had spent years keeping the peace at the cost of my own dignity. No more. Kevin and Daniel walked me out of the courthouse like bodyguards. Hannah followed behind, shoulders squared. Outside, the air smelled like car exhaust and cold. Uncle Henry, Kevin said quietly, we really don't want your money. I know, I said. Then why are you doing this? Daniel asked, voice cracking. We've seen what it's doing to your family. I looked at them. You didn't see what they did to it long before you came into the picture, I said. This isn't about punishing them, not entirely. It's about honoring your aunt, about keeping a promise. And Hannah? Kevin asked. She stayed. Yes, I said. And she gets nothing? He asked. Who said that? I asked. They both stared. You saw the will, Daniel said. Yes, I said. You didn't see the trust. That night, Hannah came over alone. No kids, no casserole, no distractions. She stood in my kitchen, coat still on, hands clenched at her sides. You won, she said. Congratulations. It doesn't feel like winning, I said. It never does, she muttered. We sat at the table where I'd done their homework with them once upon a time. You're angry, I said. I'm exhausted, she corrected. I've spent the last month on the phone trying to get them to calm down, to act like normal humans. I've listened to Melissa cry about how humiliated she is. I've listened to David rant about bloodlines and legacy. I've listened to Eric apologize for signing something he didn't really believe in. And I've listened to you being stubborn as ever. Stubborn? I asked mildly. You could have left them something, she said. Not because they deserve it, but because fighting like this, it's tearing everything apart. It was already apart, I said. She shook her head. You keep saying that, she said. You're not wrong, but you're not blameless either, you know. The words stung more than anything my other children had said. How am I to blame? I asked, genuinely curious. You never told us how much you had, she said. We grew up thinking we were barely squeaking by. Then when you sold the company, you didn't sit us down and talk about what that meant. You didn't set expectations. You just kept quiet and hoped we'd stay the same. You think knowing the number would have made you better? I asked. No, she said. I think it would have made their motives clearer sooner. Maybe Mom would have seen it. Maybe she would have said something before it was too late. She sighed. I'm not defending them, she said. They've been awful. But you can't pretend any of this is simple. I never said it was simple, I said. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I opened the drawer beside me and slid an envelope across the table. What's this? She asked. Something I've been holding on to, I said. Waiting. She looked at me warily, then opened it. Her eyes moved across the page. The color drained from her face. Dad, she whispered. What is this? A copy of the trust, I said. The one I set up before the hearing. The one you mentioned to Kevin and Daniel, she asked. Yes, I said. She looked again. It says... Her voice shook. It says the trust holds $12 million. Yes, I said, and that the beneficiaries are... She swallowed, reading. 1/3 to Kevin Miller, 1/3 to Daniel Ortiz, 1/3 to... Me? Yes, I said. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. I thought... She laughed, a choked sound. I thought you'd given everything to them. I told you, I said. Money changes people. I wanted to see if it would change you. So far it hasn't. Her eyes filled with tears. That's cruel, she whispered. Yes, I said. So is hearing my son ask when I would die so he could finally stop worrying about his mortgage. She flinched. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't say it, I reminded her. I still feel complicit, she said. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. Do you want the money? I asked. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. I want you, she said. The rest. I don't even know what to do with a number like this. That's the right answer, I said. If I'd said the wrong one, would you have changed it? She asked. Probably, I admitted. She laughed through her tears. You're insane, she said. So they keep telling me, I replied. When my children learned about the trust, it was not because I told them. It was because they forced my hand. 2 weeks after the hearing, I woke to the sound of someone pounding on my door. I shuffled down the hallway, heart racing. David stood on the porch, breath puffing in the cold air. He held a folder in one hand and something else in the other, a for sale sign. You're selling the house? He demanded as soon as I opened the door. Without telling us? Yes, I said. Why? He snapped. Because I don't want to die in a 4-bedroom mausoleum, I said. Because the stairs are getting harder. Because every corner of this place smells like your mother and it's starting to hurt more than it helps. And what happens to the proceeds? He asked, eyes narrowing. They go to your precious boys, too? Yes, I said. Into the trust. His nostrils flared. What trust? He spat. I realized then that he thought the will was the whole picture. He hadn't once considered that I might have done something more. That's none of your business, I said. He shoved the folder into my hands. This came in the mail, he said. Some kind of banking notice. I saw the amount. He wasn't supposed to have seen it. The envelope had my name on it. How did you... I began. It got forwarded to our address by mistake. He lied too quickly. The post office messed up. I opened it without looking at the label. He was lying. He'd changed my mailing address without my consent. My jaw tightened. So you know now, I said. 15 million. Disappointed it wasn't more. His laugh was sharp. I underestimated you, he said. I thought you were a small-time contractor who got lucky. Turns out you're sitting on a fortune and decided to throw it at outsiders. Kevin is your cousin, I said. Daniel grew up in this house almost as much as you did. He's not blood, David said. And Kevin is half a stranger. Kevin was here when your mother couldn't keep anything down, I said. He looked away. You sold the house, he repeated. Yes, I said. Closing's next month. And then where will you live? He asked. A smaller place, I said. Near Hannah. Hannah knew? He demanded. She knew about the move, I said. Not the numbers, until now. His eyes narrowed. You gave her some, he said. Not a question. A deduction. Yes, I said. His face twisted. So she wins, he snarled. She plays the good daughter and walks away with a third? She was the good daughter, I said. She showed up. He stepped closer. You think this is over? He hissed. You think you can buy your way out of being our father? You owe us. That word again. Oh. I thought of Laura, frail in her hospital bed, asking where the kids were. They're busy, I'd lied. You don't have to come, she'd whispered. But I hoped, I snapped. I owe you nothing, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, helped with your down payment. I watched you walk away from your mother when she needed you most. I watched you measure my worth in what you expected to get when I died. If you think I owe you anything after that, you learned nothing from me and everything from the worst parts of this world. He stepped back like I'd hit him. You'll regret this, he said. No, I said. You will. He stormed off, tires squealing as he tore away. That afternoon, Aaron called. You might get more trouble soon, he said. They're trying to argue mental cruelty now. Something about you weaponizing your estate. I laughed, a tired sound. They're the ones who turned my death into a math problem, I said. He hesitated. Do you want to keep going? He asked. Yes, I said. They might come after Hannah too, he warned. If they think she influenced your decision about the trust. I doubt they even believe she got anything, I said. In their minds, if they didn't get it, no one decent would have. Still, he said, be ready. I was. What I wasn't ready for was what came next. Eric showed up the next day. He looked 10 years older than he had at the funeral. Can I come in? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. We sat in the living room, the for sale sign leaning against the wall like a question neither of us wanted to answer. I heard about the trust, he said. David told you, I said. Of course, he said. He's furious. Melissa, too. And you? I asked. He shrugged helplessly. I don't know what I feel, he said. Betrayed, I guess. Ashamed. Embarrassed. Angry. Not just at you. Who else? I asked. He rubbed his face. At myself, he said. At them. At Nora for pushing me into that lawsuit. At me for letting her. We sat in silence. If I'd come more when Mom was sick, he said. If I'd insisted, would any of this be different? Yes, I said. He flinched. That's honest, he said. I'm too old for polite lies, I said. He laughed once bitterly. I remember that summer you hurt your back, he said suddenly. I was 12. You tried to carry a cement bag by yourself and ended up laid out for a week. We lived on grilled cheese and canned soup. Your mother almost killed me, I said. I promised myself then that I'd never be like you, he said. Working until something broke. Putting family ahead of everything. I told myself I'd have balance. Boundaries. How did that work out? I asked. He gave me a look. I became you, he said. Except worse. I worked like a lunatic and still managed to be less present than you ever were. At least you came home eventually. I checked my email at dinner and called that parenting. It's not too late, I said. He smiled sadly. For the kids, maybe, he said. For Mom, no. For you. He trailed off. What do you want, Eric? I asked. I don't know, he said. Part of me wants to beg you to change the trust, to prove I'm not like them, to show you I can do better. Another part of me thinks I should tell you to keep it, that I don't deserve it, that I'll figure it out without your money like some kind of penance. He looked at his hands. What do you think I should want? He asked. You should want to be better than you were yesterday, I said. With or without a check? He nodded slowly. Are you going to change it? He asked. Yes, I said. His head snapped up. What? He asked. Eventually, I said. Trust can be amended. Wills too. As long as I'm breathing, nothing is set in stone. That's what none of you seem to understand. You acted like I died the moment Mom did, and your only job was to pick my bones clean. He winced. I'm sorry, he said, for my part in that, for not stopping them, for signing what I didn't fully believe in. I know, I said. He looked at me, eyes hopeful and afraid. I'm not promising you anything, I said. Not today. If you're here because of the money, you'll leave disappointed. If you're here because you realize you only have one parent left and you've wasted too many evenings already, then we have time. He nodded. I want time, he said. If you'll give me that. I've been giving it all along, I said. You just weren't taking it. He left an hour later. We didn't talk about the trust again. We talked about his kids, about his job, about the weather. Small things that feel big when you almost lose them. Selling the house was like amputating a limb. Every room held a memory, the notch on the doorframe where we'd marked the kids' heights every birthday. The squeaky stair that had always betrayed late-night fridge raids. The spot on the living room wall where a soccer ball had left a dent and Laura had refused to repair it because it's part of our story now. Kevin and Daniel helped me pack. Hannah came on weekends, sorting through boxes of clothes and books. We donated most of it. I kept a few things. Laura's favorite sweater. The mug with a crack she'd refused to throw away. The photo of us in front of the first house we ever bought. The kids small and sticky with popsicle juice. On the day the sale finalized, I handed the keys to a young couple with a baby on the way. Take care of her, I said, patting the doorframe. The new owner smiled. We will, she said. I believed her. I moved into a smaller house on a quiet street 3 blocks from Hannah's place. It had 1 floor, no stairs, a small garden. The first night it felt strange, too new, too clean. Then Hannah's kids came barreling in with their backpacks, shouting about school and homework, and a bully named Tyler who needed to be taught a lesson. Kevin stopped by with a toolbox, muttering about how new builds always cut corners. Daniel dropped off a slow cooker because you shouldn't be standing over a stove every night. I sat on my new porch that evening, listening to the distant sounds of life. For the first time since Laura died, the future didn't look like a long, empty hallway. It looked like Sundays filled with noise, with or without my other children. They made their choice. So did I. You want to know what happened to the $15 million? People always ask that part. That's a lot of money, they say, eyes wide. You just gave it away? No, I didn't give it all away. Not yet. The trust holds $12 million. 1/3 assigned to Kevin, 1/3 to Daniel, 1/3 to Hannah. The remaining $3 million stays in my control for now. Part of it funds a scholarship in Laura's name for kids in our town who want to go into trades instead of college. Part of it sits in an account I haven't told anyone about, not even Aaron. I call it my forgiveness fund. Maybe one day David will show up without a lawyer. Maybe Melissa will call without crying about what people will think. Maybe Eric will keep coming back week after week until the apologies aren't about money at all. If that day comes, I'll decide then what to do with those remaining zeros. For now, my most valuable asset isn't in any bank. It's the chair across from me at Sunday dinner, occupied by a daughter who chose me over a number on a page. It's the way Kevin still takes out the trash without being asked, despite knowing he'll be more than comfortable someday. It's Daniel mowing my lawn, complaining about the heat and then sitting on the porch steps to drink lemonade and tell me about the girl he's thinking about proposing to. It's my grandchildren climbing into my lap with sticky hands, asking for stories about Laura. It's peace when I turn off the light at night, knowing I didn't betray the woman I promised to love until death do us part. She's gone. I'm still here. And I finally understand what she meant when she said, "Split it between the ones who really love you." People hear $15 million and think that's the important part of my story. It isn't. The important part is the question hidden underneath the title I chose. $15 million in inheritance, or a relationship with their father. My children answered that question long before I did. David chose the money. He hasn't called in months. I hear about him through the grapevine. Promotions, new cars, a bigger house with a bigger mortgage. He'd assumed my estate would eventually clean up. Melissa chose the money. She posts inspirational quotes about family first online and hasn't set foot in my new home. Eric is trying to choose differently. He comes by on Thursdays now. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we just watch a game and say nothing. He's a work in progress. So am I. Hannah chose me. I chose her back. And Kevin and Daniel? They chose us when there was no promise of a payout at all. In the end, my wife's last wish wasn't about revenge. It was about math. Simple, brutal math. Who showed up? Who didn't? Who came back even after the money changed everything? I divided my estate accordingly, not between bloodlines, between love. And when the lawyer read that final line of the will in his office, months after the dust had settled, when he read aloud how the trust would unlock someday, how the house sale had funded scholarships instead of sports cars, half the room went pale. The other half started applauding. Kevin, Daniel, Hannah. They weren't clapping for the money. They were clapping for Laura, for her courage to ask me to do something that would hurt before it healed, for my stubborn old heart learning, too late for some, but not too late for all, that love is worth more than any number on any page. So if you ask me now, at 71 years old, sitting on a modest porch with a mug of lukewarm coffee and a grandchild asleep against my shoulder, would you do it again? Would you really risk your children's love over money? I'll tell you the truth. I didn't risk their love. They did. All I did was stop pretending not to see it.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.